A federal judge just ruled that Trudeau's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act during the so-called Freedom Convoy was unreasonable and violated some charter rights. Though, interestingly, not the ones you might expect. Here's what you need to know about all this. The Emergencies Act is a really heavy hammer to use, so it makes sense that a lot of people would be interested in having Canada's courts scrutinize it closely to make sure no dangerous precedents are being set. Because the Emergencies Act gave cops a ton of extra power and allowed the government to freeze the bank accounts of those connected to the occupation. A mandatory inquiry found last year that the government did meet the threshold to invoke the Emergencies Act, but even then they said it was close. And now a federal court has found the opposite and ruled the emergency proclamation was, quote, not justified. And that in using this overly broad tool, the government violated the charter right to free expression and to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. But interestingly, the judge found there was no violation of freedom to peaceful assembly, because the judge said the convoy was basically an occupation that interfered with the lives of local residents, workers, and businesses. In the wake of this decision, I reached out to lawyer Paul Champ. He represented downtown residents and businesses during that previous Emergencies Act inquiry. And he told me he thinks the invocation of the act was a blunt tool that was unnecessary. As, quote, a coordinated response from the different levels of government could have addressed the excesses of the Freedom Convoy. He broke down the ruling for me like this, quote, the federal court basically ruled that the government's invocation of the Emergencies Act was unreasonable because it was overly broad and there was insufficient evidence that other laws or levels of government could not address the chaotic protests. Even as this judge found the government's handling of the occupation was unreasonable, he did agree that a lot of the stuff the convoy did was pretty fucked up. Like, the judge found the convoy, quote, went beyond legitimate protests and reflected an unacceptable breakdown of public order. So while a lot of different groups might be presenting this as a win or a loss for a certain political team, the actual winner here is democracy. Because the government is being held to account, and so are Canadians who think they have a right to totally disrupt other people's lives. And they did. Trust me. I lived through it. Anyways, the federal government is appealing this decision, so we'll see what happens next. But in the meantime, what do you think of all this?